When I bought my small, slightly crooked house, the one with the sagging porch, railing, and the stubborn old maple, tree blocking half the sunlight, I imagined it as a quiet escape from noise, chaos, and unnecessary drama. What I didn't expect was that my most peaceful possession, my high-speed fiber internet connection, would eventually become the most valuable and most argued about object in the entire neighborhood. My job required me to work from home for a defense contractor. I wasn't building missiles or hacking satellites, nothing dramatic like the movies. I handled systems engineering, mostly maintenance, logistics, and monitoring automated processes. Boring to most people, but essential. What mattered was that my work relied on a stable, low-latency internet connection. If my connection lagged, I lagged. And if I lagged, important reports didn't get submitted, servers didn't get updated, and meetings didn't get attended. My paycheck depended on those small, glowing green lights on my modem. So, like any responsible adult who depended on connectivity, I invested in a neat, reliable setup. I buried conduits leading from the back fence to the garage. I installed a tidy patch panel. I even bought a modem that could handle heavy loads without overheating. Everything looked clean and professional. But apparently, looking too professional is a crime in my neighborhood, at least according to Karen. Karen was the self-appointed guardian of our HOA, a woman whose identity was built entirely around enforcing rules no one else even remembered existed. She patrolled the streets with a clipboard, inspecting everyone's mailbox angle, lawn height, and trash bin positioning with military precision. If a leaf landed in the wrong place, Karen noticed. And Karen noticed my setup. She complained about the antenna on my roof, an antenna that wasn't even mine. She insisted I had installed a messy satellite dish, even though it belonged to a previous owner and wasn't even functional. She wrote up a violation. Because my cable provider's repair, workers once stepped on my side yard to fix a neighbor's connection. Every week, she hovered around my driveway like a storm cloud waiting to strike. For a while, I ignored her. Annoying neighbors exist everywhere. But everything changed one Monday morning. I came home after a quick grocery run and immediately sensed something was wrong. The house was silent, not peaceful silent, but unnaturally, eerily silent. My smart doorbell didn't greet me with its usual chime. The fridge didn't beep to inform me the freezer door wasn't closed properly. The thermostat display was blank. And most concerning of all, my internet was dead. My phone stubbornly loaded nothing. Thinking it was a routine outage, I sighed, put on a hoodie, and walked out back to check the junction box. The weather was calm, no fallen branches, no storms. Everything looked normal until I reached the final stretch of fiber leading from the utility pole to my ground box. My cable had been cleanly, precisely cut. Not torn, not frayed, not chewed by animals. A perfect slice, the kind only a sharp tool could make. My stomach dropped. Someone had intentionally severed my line. I took pictures from every angle. I documented the time. I posted a quick alert in the neighborhood, app warning others not to tamper with. Equipment. Comments poured in instantly. Some supportive, some joking, some blaming aliens. I called my provider. They checked and told me service to the entire neighborhood was fine. But my individual handoff was down. They promised to send a crew. The next morning and gave me a temporary hotspot that was so slow it might as well have been powered by hamster wheels. Before sunrise the next day, someone knocked. It was Karen. Her hair was pinned into its usual perfect bun, and her eyes scanned the broken cable with theatrical disappointment. She pointed at the severed line like it was guilty of violating property aesthetics. "You really should be more careful with how your cables run," she said. I stared at her. "Did you cut my cable?" She blinked, putting on an award-worthy performance of innocence. "I found it like that. I already reported it to the HOA. Something in her voice made it clear she wanted control, not just of the rules, but of me. When the repair crew arrived, I handed them coffee. The lead technician crouched beside the cable, squinted, and shook his head. "This is no accident," he said. "That's a clean cut." My face warmed with anger. "Can you fix it today?" "We need to check upstream." He paused, studying the paperwork. "Did you say you work for a defense contractor?" When I nodded, he looked suddenly alert. "I'm calling dispatch. This just became priority." Within an hour, black government sedans appeared on my street, gliding to a stop like shadows. Men and women in suits stepped out calmly, carrying notepads and earpieces. They weren't FBI kicking down doors. They were polite, controlled, and very serious. One of them asked to confirm my identity. Another spoke quietly with the technician. They explained that the severed cable had triggered an automatic flag on a dedicated communications path used for operational coordination. It wasn't classified, but it was sensitive enough that tampering required investigation. Karen stood in her driveway pretending she wasn't watching, but she was practically vibrating with panic. Agents questioned her politely. Her answers were sharp, clipped, and rehearsed. Then a neighbor volunteered footage from their backyard camera, grainy but clear enough to show Karen pacing near the alley at 2:12 a.m. Her story crumbled instantly. What had started as a petty HOA complaint was now a documented incident involving federal liaisons, evidence logs, and possible legal consequences. By noon, my connection was restored, and the neighborhood had gone silent, not from outages, but from shock. Karen's removal as HOA president didn't calm her spirit. Instead, it made her quieter, too quiet. She stopped yelling at delivery drivers and stopped inspecting lawns with her tape measure. She didn't even glare at kids riding bikes across her sidewalk. But silence from someone like her wasn't peace. It felt like a storm waiting behind a closed door. I tried to ignore it and focus on my work. My company had placed me on temporary leave during the investigation. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because they needed to verify my system hadn't been compromised. The moment I logged in again, I saw messages from my team saying they were glad I was safe. That word safe landed strangely. I hadn't thought of myself as unsafe before. Annoyed, yes. Inconvenienced, definitely, but not endangered. Until the fiber line was cut. A few days later, while returning from a grocery run, something caught my eye. Karen was standing in her driveway with a stack of papers and a determined look. She approached me, holding the documents like a shield. "I need you to sign these," she said sharply. "No greeting?" I replied. "No explanation? This is an agreement saying you'll move your cables underground. Your setup is disturbing neighborhood aesthetics." I almost laughed. She had lost her authority, yet she was still acting like the neighborhood sheriff. "Karen," I said, steadying my voice, "I'm not signing anything. And you can't enforce HOA policies anymore." Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't about the HOA. This is about order in the community." Before I could respond, Mr. Alvarez from across the street walked over. He shook his head at her. "Karen, stop! Everyone knows what you did. Let it go." She stiffened and returned home without another word. But something in her expression bothered me, a mix of embarrassment and wounded pride. That night, around 11:30 p.m., I took my trash bins out and noticed Karen's lights flickering inside. I heard loud voices, hers and another woman's. I didn't mean to listen, but it was impossible not to hear. "How could you do that, Karen?" the other woman shouted. "You cut a government-linked line. You could go to jail!" Karen snapped back. "It wasn't even labeled." And he knew the rules before moving here. He brought all this on himself. Her voice cracked at the end. I realized something important then. Karen wasn't evil. She was overwhelmed, drowning in her own need for control. And when she lost her position, she spiraled. A week passed with no incidents. The government formally closed their inquiry. They concluded that the severed fiber hadn't caused any leaks or breaches, and my job returned to normal. The neighborhood slowly exhaled. Kids played outside again. People stopped whispering behind fences. Life felt normal. Until the morning I saw the "for sale" sign on Karen's lawn. I found her outside, trimming her rose bushes. She didn't look up when I approached. "Moving?" I asked. She snipped another branch. "I don't belong here anymore." I hesitated, then said honestly, "You made mistakes, but you're not a villain. Maybe you just need a fresh start." For the first time, she met my eyes without anger. "I didn't mean for everything to go so far," she said quietly. "I just wanted things to look right. I thought keeping everything perfect would keep everyone happy. Sometimes trying to control everything breaks more than it fixes," I replied. She nodded slowly. "I guess I learned that the hard way." There was no apology, but there didn't need to be. Understanding felt enough. 2 weeks later, Karen moved out. Her replacement, a young couple with a hyperactive golden retriever, brought a different kind of chaos, but a harmless one. They introduced themselves with cookies instead of complaints. With Karen gone, the street felt different, lighter. Yet, the whole ordeal taught me something unexpected. Even the smallest cut line can unravel everything beneath the surface, revealing insecurities, fears, and the fragile balance of a neighborhood trying to live together. I upgraded my network, secured the alley gate, and carried on with my life. But every time I saw a utility worker testing the cables, I remembered the night the government sedans lined the street, and Karen realized she had crossed a line she should never have touched. Some lessons come quietly. Others arrive with flashing lights. Ours came with a single, deliberate cut, one that changed the neighborhood forever.